Welcome to the Awaken Organization.
So let's start. Just a quick check-in. High and a low. Peter, why don't you start us off?
Oh my God, I never start. I met two people who own fifth generation farm owners here. So I'm up in Ottawa, Canada. All my family's down in Florida, Aisha. And just so you know, so I'm up in Canada. Jeremy is as well, but his company is a B Corp IT provider out in San Francisco. And we are submitting our B Corp application on Thursday of this week, which is super exciting. But that said, I've been a city boy most of my life, and I went to meet two people who own their family farm. And you know, when you meet like really good friggin' people, you're just sitting there and you feel, I was driving out of there and I was like, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. These are good peeps and they're doing good stuff. And, you know, they're talking about their legacy of what they want to achieve with their family farm. And speaking of entrepreneurship, they own like 4 businesses. They have this soil and turf thing. They do landscaping. They do eggs. They own, okay, sorry, this is just me. They own 13,000 chickens that lay 4.3 million eggs a year. I had a massive WTF moment on my forehead. And then they want to open a microbrewery. They are just the most salt of the earth people. So this was my, like, I am blessed to meet good peeps. And my low, no, I don't really have a low. I guess my second high right now is getting into a flow state. So I'm 5 years into the entrepreneurial journey with my agency, and I've been effing up a lot of things for most of this time. And now I'm to a point where we're doing a few things right and working with great people. So I feel blessed. Other than this ongoing rain, which a lot of people are starved for, so I won't complain about. Things are pretty good.
Aisha, how about you?
Well, that was a very good high. Good
Thank
people
you.
is a good high. For me, my high and my low is kind of the same. So all week last week was preparing to go to Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I'm originally from. I was getting an award for my college. And of course, it was really exciting to me, very sentimental moment, because I didn't participate in my undergraduate graduation or my master's degree graduation. So it's a great time to like get my mom and dad together, and be with family and celebrate. And so it was such a high because it was a healthy and happy time. So I'm at the banquet
Nice.
and they are giving out these awards, which is amazing. And they have ranked these 149 companies, picked the top 25 of those companies. And so they were like, we're going to award the top 3 growing businesses that were under 10 million. And then we're going to rank the 3 businesses that were over 10 million fastest growing. So, of course, they call my name for the under 10 minute fastest growing, which was a shock and was very exciting. But I kept thinking, like, how do I get on that $10 million list? Like, what do I have to do? What changes do I have to make? So it's kind of like a high, but then it like really put things into perspective that I really need to crank it up a bit. I need to increase my digital products. I need to go investigate some of these $10 million businesses and figuring out like what I have left out. So it was a celebratory time, but also like, here we go. Like, right, more work to do.
Were you able to
Nice.
soak it in at least for a minute before you started questioning what you needed to do differently?
Probably like 45 seconds. I was sitting at the tray, like at the table, like my toxic trait is I'm ready to get out of here and figure out how to make $10 million before they even finish this conversation.
That's hilarious.
Nice.
How about you, Jeremy?
Thank you. I'd say the high was probably Father's Day. So I got 2 younger kids, and for most of my life, Father's Day was not something that I celebrated as a recipient. So it was nice. It was just nice family day, nice weather, and then
Awesome.
Got to ask for what I wanted, which is a pattern that I'm not very good at doing. So I got to ask for what I wanted and got it, which is some me time to go, take care of some projects, go to the gym, do some things that felt nourishing to me. And then low is actually just, my daughter's been sick. She's about almost 3. And man, she is so cranky. She's sick. It is unreal. And wants to beat up her little brother. And when she hurts him, like walks over, just steps on his fingers, or whatever, makes him cry, I get so mad. My low is that, like, and I'm not somebody that typically reacts with anger, but I like instant go rage. I like want to go defend him and like smack her. I'm like, but I don't want to like hit my kids. So it's just this like profound moment of just like fury. And then what do? I can't teach my kid violence to stop violence. Like, that's not going to work. And it was just like this helpless feeling. So that was my low, is just struggles with, having so much power and trying to find an outlet to use it that is actually productive. So anyway, that's where I'm at. And yeah, parenting's hard.
Yeah, totally. My girls are now 15 and 12, and clearly my cool factor has been dropping for many a year now, but it's just amazing watching them fight back. Yeah, it's definitely hard, but I'm sure every age has got its challenges. Aisha, I'm sure at 20 years old, I don't know, has your son come back to you, or did he ever leave?
He has not left, thank goodness. I don't know. That would destroy me. COVID was a gift in that he didn't move on campus. He stayed home, and he's kind of adapted to that. He kind of likes that lifestyle. So I thought I was going to be saying bye when he, went to campus. So I've been pretty happy about that. It comes with its own challenges, but it's very rewarding when they can cook for you, when they can drive places, and it's very rewarding. I love being like my son will be 21 next month. I'm calling it like the no kid phase.
Do you have any goals or things you want to do in the no kid phase?
I tried to do all the things. So I was just not one of those people that let being a single mom stop me. So we moved all across the country. We did all the things that we wanted to do. So for me, it's just celebration and watching him evolve into the person that he's going to be, and just trying to provide support, So I do everything I want to do now. I just left him for 4 days. I'll leave him again.
That's how it goes. So I heard that you might be able to tell us a bit about equity.
A little bit. I'm sure we can definitely talk about equity and diversity and inclusion for sure.
A great place to start. I'd also love to hear a bit about the entrepreneurial side of you and the B Corp side and the intersection of all of these things. Because obviously sustainability, or whatever umbrella you want to put on it, goes beyond equity, diversity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And that is just one of the cornerstones of, but I'd love to hear kind of from you about all of it. So we can start there. Seems like a good place to start.
Yeah. So when I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, like I have this business, get these awards. And so my family is like, so where's the check? Like, when are you going to have money? Right? Like, that's pretty much the bottom line of all of this. It's like, okay. So I always tell people, whenever I'm like made it, when I come on like shows like this, you will know that I made it, because I'm going to have one of those like fancy fish tanks in the back with like, you know, the fish tanks that I'm talking about, the ones that have all the exotic fish in them, and they're swimming together, and it's beautiful because you didn't you didn't do it. You just paid someone else to do it, and it looks good. And like, you don't have to advocate for the fish, because there's a fish advocate that makes sure everything is going the way that it should, right? You don't know those big tanks. So that's when I think about diversity, equity, inclusion, I also think about those tanks. And so for me, when I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I started thinking about the ecosystems that people are managing. And it just reminds me of a fish tank, because my mom was into fish at one point in her life. So let's just say, for example, you were building an ecosystem and you were like, yep. So I'm building this company, or I'm building this department, or whatever, however you look at it. And I'm building it for goldfish. And so we know that goldfish like their water cold and dirty. We know that, right? Like, from growing up, going to the fair and the carnivals and like all the nasty children with their nasty hands on the balls, throwing them into the fish would like survive, right? Like goldfish like their water cold. They like it a little dirty, right? So that's how you're gonna build your tank. And then they have little fins, right? So those little fins are gonna be when you set up the furniture, you're setting it up so their little fins can get through the furniture. And so you have like a tank of goldfish. And then here comes Peter saying, well, we need some diversity. So you're like, okay, yeah, I need some diversity. So diversity is just throwing another fish into the fish tank. And I always like to use beta fish, for example, right? A lot of people think that beta fish would kill that goldfish. But the truth is the beta fish does not like dirty water and it would not settle in well at all. They like their water pristine, right? And, the goldfish, they eat flakes and then the Japanese fighting fish eats pellets. They're like an extra 25 cents at the Walmart, like the food cost difference, right? So you start thinking about like, how does this fish, like if I'm in ants, if they have big fins, they can't get through where the furniture is. But you would have diversity, right? Because diversity just means different. But when you start to think about inclusion, you start to think about things like, how can I put both types of food in? Where does the water temperature need to be? Should I have a divider? Maybe an algae eater, like a different subject matter expert, could fill this team up a little bit better, right? And so, what you're trying to do is balance this delicate ecosystem. And if you've ever had one of these fish tanks or seen one of these fish tanks, if a fish dies in the fish tank, usually the advocate for the fish, the guy who's coming out, is like telling you, this is the problem. We need to switch this thing. We need to do this thing. So for me, those strategies that keep the fish in the tank together, swimming beautifully, those are your inclusion strategies, right? And I think about them like this. If you've taken a diversity, equity, and inclusion class, you probably heard the saying, diversity is being asked to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. But I like to take that a little step further because I'm a big Kanye West fan. Don't want to come to your party if I cannot have a say in the music. Need a little bit of Beyonce, a little bit of Kanye West, and I definitely want to have a say in the food, right? Because I'm on keto and I got to keep it, tight, right? And then that final piece is if you're charging money, then I want a percentage of the tickets too because I'm fabulous. And people are coming to be there because I'm there too. So we start thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We think about having full access to everything. And we think about that tank and how the tank is good for everybody. The water is good for everybody. So when I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's what I'm talking about. Equity is that state when you have that beautiful fish tank with all the fish swimming beautifully.
How long you been using that analogy, Aisha?
Maybe since 2020. I'm gonna write a book. It's the Who Moved My Cheese of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Boom.
I like it.
I have a question for you so apparently we did a little homework on you and you talk about this topic a little bit all over the place. Rumor has it, or not so much a rumor. And I was enjoying your YouTube video, What I Want My White Friends to Know. But I have a question as two privileged middle-aged white guys trying to be better allies. What's the most annoying question you get, or the most ignorant question where you roll your eyes, but you say something nice to them?
Oh, I don't think I get any ignorant questions.
Oh,
I think,
nice.
like I'm a school teacher by trade. So before
Okay.
I entered this world, I was a school teacher. So, school teachers love good questions.
Okay.
And so what I found is that I'm usually not annoyed with people because I'm harder on like processes and systems. So I try to focus on being hard on the process and the systems and easy on the people. So usually people don't get on my nerves too much more than like standard get on my nerves, right? And I have all these things I do at home to sort of keep me balanced because I'm an extreme introvert. So I do all these things at home to like make me ready for the challenge of dealing with people. But really what diversity, equity, and inclusion is to me is the study of humanity, right? It's a study of like being a student of humanity. And so for me, there's just no dumb questions, or even really frustrating questions, because we're all unpacking the complexity of what is.
Okay, I love that point. I'll ask it to you slightly differently then. What do you think is the right question to ask to get us towards a better fish tank? What are the questions we should be asking ourselves?
Every day, I don't think we should be asking ourselves the question if we're doing the work. We should be asking others, right? So if I'm the fish advocate and I'm coming in, I'm surveying the fish. Like, hey, dude, are you all right? What do you need to survive? How are you gonna like? Oh, I noticed that your fin is wrinkled. What do I need to make it spread, right? So this idea that leaders have the answer is completely egotistical to me, and like
Yep.
really thinking about all the leaders that I've been under that were great to me, let me do my thing. And they supplied me with the resources and tools to do what I do well. And so for me, it's not what questions should we be asking, but how much should we be listening? How are the different
Mm.
ways we can listen? What are the different questions we can be asking? What are the different ways we can be receiving messages, right? Because like you said this morning, you woke up, your daughter was cranky. Well, she was communicating something to you that she didn't have words for. And unfortunately, in our marriages, in our work teams, there are things we don't have words for. So we get cranky, right? So that student of humanity is like this really beautiful commitment to just loving the process of people becoming better humans.
That's refreshing.
That is refreshing.
So Aisha, question on this. This is fascinating to me because it's basically upping the ante to let's all be adults in the room and, be forgiving of humanness, and the ability to learn and to fuck up and to ask for forgiveness, which I feel like is kind of missing in a lot of conversations right now. So how to foster the comfort for trial and error amidst trying to create an inclusive environment. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like if the whole world is this like such a kind of nerfed version of we got to be so careful and safe that we don't want to take any risk. Well, then how do people risk becoming more inclusive and taking chances with things when it's not the default? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I look at, I wrote a ebook called The Courage Principle, and I really look at leadership from this perspective of courageousness, right? So if you don't have a threat, there's no reason to be courageous, right? And so this idea like cancel culture isn't real. You get to make a mistake. You just get you get called out, right? You might get dragged on Twitter, but the reality is you can redeem yourself, right? So we know that this happens all the time because we love a good redemption story, especially here in America. Um, so for me, I think it's just about being courageous and then creating community and finding a space. We talk a lot about like this new workforce, this new workspace, right? So like I'm in the places where I work and I have influence. I'm really talking about the irresistible job offer. No one's ever like talked about a job like that. But I'm like, where this is not irresistible. Like this is so resistible. Like I will resist the fuck out of this one right here, right? So creating job descriptions that are irresistible to people and that bring people into, not just a place like to get their paycheck, but a place to grow. And I think as we start reshaping our work environments into work communities, and really like taking ownership of the whole person as a part of like what we do, I think it becomes easier for people to mess up because you have it through like this lens of a continuation, right? My mom and my dad worked like jobs. Like my mom has been at her job since before the doors opened. And my dad was a career Marine. So I've kind of like watched people like stay, and I couldn't do it. Like I would go crazy, right? Like If I was the same job in 3 years, like they would have to take me out, drag me away from here. But we come from a culture where people worked, right? They worked their jobs. They worked one job or two jobs their entire life. Now people have 4 or 5 career changes and we do things just so much differently. So for me, I think just providing that space where people aren't just there to get a check, but to grow and to become industry leaders and like to become thought partners in the industry and to be a part of the conversation. And I don't think we've done a good job of that, especially like the lower down the totem pole an employee is, where they're most susceptible to being like cult followings of an industry, or they have the potential to actually one day become influencers. We tend to leave them out of the conversation.
Oh shit! I love the message. How to affect that change? Let me know. I can help. We've done some of this. So financial literacy training for all employees, employee ownership, coming after that, so that they actually know what they're getting into and how to read and creating, real equity for all within the organization. But there was no handbook for us on this. This was very much like, well, there's a few companies I've heard of that have done this, but it is not the business as usual message. I'm curious, how do you get this popularized? How do you get this out there? I'm 1,000,000% on board with what you're saying. And I love it. And how do we magnify that? And I agree, the current workforce, they're fed up with the old status quo bullshit corporate career path. That is not in the cards. So, maybe it's a survival of the fittest of the companies that do embrace this change. But I'm curious, just if you have any thoughts on how do we make this happen? I want to live in the future you're describing. How do we get there?
I know I need $1 million book deal.
$10 million, right? Once Aisha gets to 10 million, we're set.
In my plan, $1 million book deal. Great podcasts like this, conversations, holding our colleagues accountable. I do this thing sometimes when I go into a room and I might say, like, how many of you serve on a board? Like this happened. Okay, so Juneteenth, like when I launched my company, my mentor was like, "Oh, you gotta do Juneteenth." He's like, "This is gonna be so great for you." So my little new company, my husband and my son, right? Because that's all that works for me. We put on the Juneteenth for like the entire city of Asheville, in
Nice.
partnership with the Martin Luther King Jr. Association, and we get there. It's my first event. My company's launching, and my friend does not show up. And the person he was going to have on the panel did not show up. So I end up having to get on the panel. So I'm sitting on the panel, resting my feet, mind you, because you never get to sit down when it's your event. But I get to rest my feet. And I look out and I'm thinking, like, I planned this Juneteenth for like little Black girls with afros. But I look out and it's everybody, right? Like just a hodgepodge of people here to support Juneteenth. They're amazing. And I was like really stunned, like, wow, like they're here to celebrate the ending of slavery. They're here to celebrate, my freedom. And I felt good about that. And I was like, maybe they're not racist. This is just me. I'm thinking, like, maybe they're not racist. I have more questions. This is my event. So I go, son, hand me that microphone, like a mom, like in the middle of the event. And I say, like, all right, this is the question I have for you. Raise your hand. No, stand up if you serve on a board or donate to a board. And I would say about 80% of the room stood up. I said, okay, sit back down. I said, do you believe that everybody deserves commensurate pay, no matter of gender, age? And everybody was like, yeah. The whole room stood up. 100% of people stood up. So 80% of people said that they give money to organizations or serve on boards. 100% of people said that, like, they believed that all people should be paid equally, commensurate, like with salary and all that stuff organized. And then I said, stand up if you actually ask the question before you sign off and vote or give money to an organization. 4 people stood up. And that was it. Like, oh, I'm not courageous enough to say, are women getting paid equally here? Or I'm not courageous enough to say, can we do a pay gap analysis? Right? Like, I have the power to say it. I have the fiduciary responsibility. It is within my right to say it, but most people aren't even trained on how to exercise their rights and like how to show up in a room and be an advocate for equity, right? And then this is dangerous work. Like my grandmother had dogs turned on her. She had hoses turned on her. So for me, I'm just looking at it from that lens of like, it's dangerous. I want people to feel secure. They need training. We want to give a lot there, and so we need books, we need literature. We just need so much so that people can get ready.
Do you think, Aisha, on that the rest of that room, other than those 4 people, that they didn't have the courage to ask those questions, or it's just ignorance or don't care or both?
I think courage is a big part of it. And when we talk about ignorance, it's like not knowing better, right? Like I can
Yep.
be ignorant to a
Yep.
lot of things, right? So yeah, of course, because I've served on boards. I'm sure you all have served on boards. A lot of times you just don't know what you can ask. And I'm going to tell you, nobody wants to be the person in the meeting that holds the meeting for 15 more minutes, right? We have a culture of that, right? You can be the annoying person for asking too many questions or asking the question at the wrong time. It's 4:49. She was just about to let us out of here. Even though the meeting isn't scheduled to be over till 5, people will do all kind of grunting because you asked a question. It's not safe out there all the time.
So building on that word, what's your key to building that safety, right? So because what you're talking about is, and this is back to Jeremy's point, I think as we're both navigating this journey ourselves and for our families and our teams, how do you create the safety to stay curious and ask the tough questions or get into the nitty gritty that might piss somebody off on that board,
Right. So I don't believe in being safe.
Okay.
Right. Like everybody's like, build a safe space. I'm like, as a Black woman, I've never been safe, y'all. Like, how? Like, tell me about this space. Right. So I don't believe in that, but I do believe in brave spaces. I believe in spaces where people can have growing edges, difficult conversations, and that the consequences of those conversations don't have to be punitive. Right. And so it is really the continued practice of that and laying that out. So,
amen.
Just creating those spaces and leaning in and training people and making sure that they understand that space, I think is critical.
So talk to me. I took that down and it's definitely going in the show notes, brave spaces versus safe spaces. Talk to me about creating a brave space.
I think we were all interested in being a safe space because it feels good, right? It sounds good.
Yep.
But honestly, are you ever really safe? Like, no, And the reality is that you have to have the courage to mess up. You have to have the space. Like, there got to be people that you can close that door with and have a real conversation where those words are coming out of your mouth are just questions and not doom, right? Like, you got to be able to wreck yourself. You can't check yourself if you don't wreck yourself. You know what I mean? Because you got to know what a wreck looks like and what it doesn't look like.
100%. You got to cross the line to know where the line is.
Yeah, a lot of times, especially like depending on who you are, right? Some people are like, I can see other people cross the line and I'm not going to do it. And then there are like people like my son, like he's going to test the line. He's going to test that line until he can't test it anymore.
Yeah, people have different edges, right? Like, the comfort that you and I, Aisha, might have in a conversation might be uncomfortable for others. And that's okay. That's how people stretch the limits of their comfort. I love that you're taking this tack. I mean, literally, Peter and I were having the conversation before you got on about, I said, I reserve the right to offend and then apologize and learn. Because how else am I going to learn? And how am I going to, even engage in meaningful conversation if I don't take the risk of offending somebody? Not with the intention to offend somebody, but that may be the unintended impact is that somebody got offended. And that should be okay.
Yes. I was a school teacher for a long time. I taught high school and I taught 5th grade, middle school mostly, and high school the most. But the thing about it was the kids would always argue and fuss and fight. And I never thought about teaching them how to do that like safely or correctly. And there is no curriculum, back then it's like teach kids how to engage in advocacy for themselves and teach kids, you know what I mean? So kids are going to school and they're being taught how to please the teacher, how to please the grading system, but there is no training for, how to be in conflict. And a really great example of this, because I'm so lucky that I get to go into schools all the time, is the teachers are like, why is she negotiating her grade with me? Why is she? And I'm like, listen, if she does not get practice negotiating these grades, she will not negotiate her pay. When you teach your daughter not to negotiate her bedtime, you're teaching her that negotiation is disrespectful. And most women don't negotiate their pay because they don't want to be disrespectful. It's not that they don't know that they deserve more. And so we really want to look at these patterns of like how we look at how we're training up people. And that is even in our companies. One of the biggest trainings that I was recommending during COVID for employers was a simple email training. And you would think like, what? But I'm like, how long do I have to respond to this email before I'm rogue in this new COVID environment? Right? Like, how long? Or how long should I wait for you to respond back? What's the policy, right? So just creating that, just an email policy, because everything went from in person to email and people weren't sure. So people were up all night, like answering emails because they didn't want it to seem like they weren't working, because they wouldn't have the structure in place for people to really understand how to show up if you've never shown up via computer before, right? Or I talk to people all the time and they're frustrated because as they're working on like self-assessment, they want their employees to self-assess. And they're like, I don't understand why people can't self-assess. And I'm like, because in school, you do not self-assess. The teacher assesses. Now they're looking for your approval because they've been getting approved for the last 12 years. Now on year 13, you want them to come in and approve themselves. They don't know how. So just those little basic trainings is like, how do I, self-assess? What is this? And we think it's about race, and a lot of times it is about race. A lot of times it's about age. A lot of times it's about gender. Sometimes it could be like, where am I from regionally, right? I know when we moved to Birmingham and my son had been in DC and the teacher told him to get his tablet and he was like, I don't have a tablet. I don't have a tablet. Because he knew what a notebook was, did not know what a tablet was, had never heard the word before, right? So it's just different people require different things. I think it's great that you're offering like these amazing benefits. I go into companies where people don't even really understand their insurance benefits. We're like, just tell us all in plain language what we get in the package.
It is not plain language, that's for sure. Yeah, we had to do a company debrief with people explaining benefits because what the benefit company provides is not an explanation of what's good for the employee right. And what are the things they should be looking out for. It's crazy. I love that you're in the into the education side of this and see it from the other bit. I've two burning questions for me. One, how do you teach healthy conflict resolution or being in conflict and getting through it? Because I feel like everybody should have learned this in second grade and nobody has learned it yet at all. And I'm actively coaching 30 and 40-year-olds how to tell somebody that, that they have conflict with that, hey, there was an impact on me. Here's what it was. Can we resolve this? So that's one. And then my other line of inquiry is around diversity. But let's start with this conflict bit, because that's just pervasive. Such a different type of pandemic of people not being able to engage in healthy conflict and come out of it unscathed. How do you teach this?
So to me, I like to think about high-performing teams. And so in a high-performing team, you're going to have conflict. So you just need to teach good resolution strategies, right? So like when I got married, I would be willing to tell my husband like the 12 things he did that annoyed me. Like, here's like 1 through 12, bro. Like, you got this list. Good day to you. I'll see you when you can resolve some of this. Well, I had to learn in conflict, you can't give anybody more than 3 bullet points or they shut down and they're like, listen, if you don't like all of that about me, you don't even like who I am, just go on about your business.
Yeah.
Right. So I learned that, you can't do that. I learned in graduate school that people really do need you to pump them up before a criticism. It should be like a sandwich, right? I really love the way that
The
you
shit
do blah,
sandwich.
blah, blah. This is what I need you to work on. And here is that bottom bread. This is why you're so valuable. I think we spend so much time telling people to humble themselves instead of telling people how important they are. And I think that's a big piece of why the workforce is the way that it is, because everybody says, like, humble yourself, which means have a low self importance. Well, babe, if you don't need me and this pay not giving, I can just walk out the door. But if you let me know, like, hey, I'm valuable and what I'm doing matters, and it is of the utmost importance that I fill up the ice machine every day because people need their ice. I love ice. I need ice, and that's an important role. Nothing is more important than a clean bathroom. If you're out on the road and you get a clean bathroom, we don't prop up on social media that the bathrooms are clean, but we love a clean bathroom, right? So I really think it's about us really getting back to really making people feel like the importance of what they do, no matter the role, because they showed us you cannot get a hamburger for lunch. Keep playing with us, right? So be grateful for those people, lift them up, make them feel special because they are.
Just before we go to your diversity piece, Jeremy, I wanted to come back to, and this might be part of your $1 million book deal here, Aisha. But it feels like the line of thought or your angle on DEI and having tough conversations versus walking on eggshells and avoiding conflict at all costs. It feels very refreshing. And maybe, for the brief amount of reading that Jeremy and I have done, we're getting spoon fed that it's more this cancel culture approach to DEI versus conversation. You figure, is this novel when you're out there? Do you get in debates on panels about your view on these things? Or would you say this is a common angle on DEI?
I definitely feel like, I enter into the DEI space because there are some problems that I feel like I can solve. And
Okay.
one is that my approach is practical. So I don't talk a lot about like the historical context to why we need DEI unless it's needed. I focus on DEI as a strategies for, I focus on strategies for equity in the present, right? And I'm going to tell
Mm.
you what I get a lot. I get a lot of Black people crying when I walk out of a room because they feel seen and heard at all white companies. I
Nice.
get white executives hugging me and crying afterwards because they feel a sense of relief and a sense that they can do their work, right? So for me, I know what I have to say is different, but I know it's the right thing to do. And so I don't get a lot of slack either because I try to charge people enough so that they feel like, okay, I don't want to not listen. Right.
Yeah.
So once people start listening and they're like, oh, okay, one of the things I try to teach people is diversity, equity, and inclusion is not for Black people or white people or vintage people or young people. It is really for everybody. And it's about creating that environment that is good for everybody. And I find that people buy into that a lot better because we're all at work, right? And
Yep.
we all want to make it home to our kids and our families, our dogs, and all the other things that we like look forward to making it home for. And so that's
Interesting.
really our shared mission. And so with good group norms, we're able to achieve that.
So I've got a conundrum. And a practical DEI strategy is exactly what is called for. So maybe you can help. So I run an IT company. IT is not the most diverse industry particularly from a gender perspective, 90%, white guys kind of a thing, or something. Is it fair for us to hoard all of the women in IT into our company to try to get to some equitable position where we've got, somewhat equal representation, gender, age, ethnicity, other, ability and otherwise? Or is it responsible to match what the broader market is and focus more on getting folks into the market in general from other groups to create more diversity within the market in general, as opposed to hoarding the resources, the people that are out there, and trying to add them to our team?
So I feel like the thing that I have to tell people is we have whole historical Black universities and colleges that are turning out like college classes full of people who are educated in computer and IT. They're not being recruited. So, you know what I'm saying? There's not a shortage of Black people in tech. There's a shortage of Black people being invited into tech. The degrees are there. A lot of times the experiences are there. The opportunity is not always there. Now, I've been looking up these tech contracts and I've been looking up what y'all are doing in tech. And I promise you, nobody invited me to the party. I promise. Right? Like nobody said, Aisha, you can go into tech. You know what I mean? Like nobody invited me. So to me, I think the idea that there's a shortage is not the case. I think there is this idea though, like if you are a Black woman and you might make it to this company, or you're a brown woman and you make it to this company, you have more visibility. Right? But I believe that there is no shortage. And I believe that we have to make more pipelines to these industries. So I think great companies do both, right? Hoard good talent, create irresistible offers that keep people on board. And if you can pay them and treat them well and help them grow in the industry and you're a great home for them, then do that work. And then be a part of a greater movement to invite more people into the space. Because in terms of what we know about diversity, your company is going to earn more with a woman in the C-suite. So you need to have that diversity and you need to lock that in for yourself. And then allow that person to be a thought leader that is talking to the other companies about the value that they're able to bring to the company. So I think it's a both and.
All right.
You need to fix the system, Jeremy, dude. Come on.
Oh, I mean, that is the hope, right? Is to have more. So we've focused on creating an inclusive and equitable environment with, dropping the barriers to entrance. But the reality is we get 10-to-1 applicants, white men, just because the number of people looking for a job in our particular industry are predominantly white men.
But if you had a program that was like, hey, we have a technical, like first of all, on the internet right now, Black girls in tech, we have like these hashtags, like they're out there, trust me.
Oh, I know. We actually we employ a number of them, and it's all by accident. It wasn't an intentional. Creating that inclusive and equitable environment has afforded us the ability to have a pretty diverse workforce. But I'm wondering if it's responsible to feel like I'm hoarding, and keeping other tech companies from being able to have their share of a diverse workforce in our same industry.
I just feel like they have to do the work. If you've done the work, they can do the work. It's
I agree.
It's that hard. We all are looking for jobs. Like, I mean, the money has to be made. The jobs have to be taken. Work has to be done. But every semester, these universities are turning out fine gender X, genderless, genderful people who are wonderful at this work and who can do this work. So I just think it's really about setting up good pathways. If you go to Harvard or if you go to Princeton, your path is set for you. Like you have good contacts and you can do. But if you go to like the state college over here and get a computer science degree, it's like, we have no women in tech. It's like, I'm right here. So
we actually dropped the educational requirement entirely as a way to open up again, create a more inclusive environment for folks from all levels of means.
That's wild. That's amazing. And how's that working out for you?
Fantastic. I would say the number of people that have come from us from, low income backgrounds is stellar. It feels great. And all walks of life have come from.
Because your colleagues say you have all the people?
What's that?
Do your colleagues accuse you of having all the people?
No. You mean industry peers and whatnot? No, not at all. I mean, we're still small. I'm just wondering, is it responsible to, for a big company to hoard talent for under this guise of diversity? That is, where essentially they're cherry picking everyone that pops up. But
I feel you're setting.
I like if you're doing the work and they want to come to you, how about it? Yeah. I like that. That works for me.
And just think about like this idea, like I know it feels like we are in little demand, but like not a lot of us, but there is enough of us. There is enough people of color to come along. There's enough for everybody. And if there's not enough, we'll take 2 jobs. Thank you.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I feel we're the opposite to you, Jeremy. We're like 80% female staff at our place. And boy, I think we're
you're not very diverse.
That's funny. Well, we have Brian and I that he keeps asking us, do we actually interview guys? And I'm like, we do, dude. They're just, so far, they have yet to be the best candidate for the job. Like bar none. It's just been, anyways, this is like, we're on the other side of that spectrum, but yeah, I don't know. We've been very fortunate on that point. Yeah, we've been lucky. I just noticed we've been chatting this whole time and you're going to laugh. We haven't gotten past question 2 on our scripted questions for you.
Scripted question. I love this conversation.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think it's actually, we found you because we're doing a lot of interviews with B Corps and our goal with this, well, beyond just talking to awesome people like yourself. And so it's like a selfish endeavor, but sharing the word, talking to a lot of people doing business differently. And we found you as a resource on, BIPOC leaders for the B Corp space. How did you end up connected there?
Look, I get to be in some of the coolest places and sometimes, friends in high places that can drop your name when you're not there. But I've been really interested in just the setup of B Corp, how it runs, and was really looking at the assessment in the DEI space and looking at the scores and was thinking like, you know what? We have to offer more support in the DEI space for people who are trying to get their certificate. And so it just became a passion of mine, particularly because I really believe in what it means to be a B Corp. And so just happened, manifestation, lit a few candles, a little black girl magic, and boom.
And we got to find you. So little magic for us as well. Talk to us. What made this your life's calling? Was there a series of events or you just woke up and say, I need to level the playing field for the world? What led you to this work?
I really hate to disappoint you, but my life's calling is to be rich and fabulous.
Boom.
You know what I'm saying? Like these hands were made for like counting money and being at the spa. Like I don't know all these things about, toiling forever. But for me as a Black woman, this is a necessity, right? Like as an entrepreneur, the numbers, y'all talking about just tech, but that's in every industry, right? So The reality is I had to learn to speak up for myself very early. And I like to speak up for others. And so it just became a thing. And when I realized people would pay me to tell them what I really want to tell them anyway, it was like, oh, this is great. Because I love to tell an employer, like, I don't want to work this job. Like, we really need to look at this job application, this job description, because no, it's giving not a fun job, right? Not a good job. So I love being able to talk to people, share my truth with them, engage them in what makes their worlds go round, and, just being human and having experiences with other humans. So, yeah.
And rock the Gucci belt along the way.
Yeah, I don't have a Gucci belt, but I got some Gucci though. I like Gucci shoes.
All right. At least you're rocking the bling while changing the world. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes.
So you got a lot of shit going on, Aisha. Like you you are juggling a lot of balls in that life. Not to mention your $1 million book deal. Talk to us a bit about Equity Over Everything. Beyond just your media company.
So Equity Over Everything is my consulting firm where I get to work with amazing leaders who are, really trying to cultivate spaces of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so, like, I offer trainings and audits, particularly more so audits. Yeah, and it's great. I've been doing it now for a while. It wasn't something that I was like I said, I didn't just like wake up one day and was like, I'm gonna do a consulting firm. I actually have a mentor who is very successful and semi-retired in DEI. And he was like, you would be great at this. And I was like, listen, everybody who is Black is in DEI. I want to do something different. I want to do something, no one else is doing. And he's like, if you talk about what we talk about, this is no one else is doing this. So I really had to be convinced to share my work in that way. And then I had, just for fun, written an institute, a 12-course institute that is a corporate training for DEI. And I had shown it to my mentor. And he was like, you got to share this with Mike, which is another colleague of ours. So I was like, okay. So I call Mike up and I'm like, Dr. Fox said I should share this with you. Can we set up a meeting? And I was pretty sure he set up the meeting because we worked together before and he felt obligated to set up the meeting. So I go in and he's looking tired. I'm looking like I have to, I'm just sharing this with you or whatever. In the middle of our conversation, his entire demeanor changed. And he was like, this is my life's work, right? Like, this is what I believe in. And so we partnered to open up the Lenore Ryan Equity and Diversity Institute, which is an 11-course institute for corporate training for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is another thing that I do through Equity Over Everything. So it's just been interesting ride, to say the least. So we launched that in 2020. I pitched it before George Floyd. It was accepted before the George Floyd situation, but that became like a catalyst for the need in corporate.
Mm-hmm.
So as entrepreneurs, y'all know all about timing. It was like the right time for the courses to launch. And so that has been amazing. And I'm so proud of the Lenore Ryan Equity and Diversity Institute.
Yeah, it's so cool. I checked it out earlier and went through it. Congrats for you on the courage of creating all these things. There's so many haters commenting and criticizing things, but you're just out creating and crafting that path, which is, speaking of courage, is awesome.
Yeah. I think if, we have a lot of negativity out there, but y'all, It is so much more positivity. It is so much more. I've been doing this thing where I have a Peloton. That's my addiction. Any Pelotoners on the call?
No, but I fit. For real?
Yeah, I was at a meeting earlier, and two of the team members were going off about Peloton and the Power series or something that they loved. And
the Power Zone,
yeah, I feel excluded. I don't feel like I'm part of the club.
Yes, definitely join Peloton. It's life. So it is the philosophy of my life. Peloton is everything to me. I'm so grateful that I jumped on Peloton. And when I decided to so I have the tread. I don't have the bike yet. I'm getting the bike in a couple of weeks. I actually have a treadmill. So I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to get into this. So I bought the tread and then I started buying the clothes. And my husband was like, nobody is going to see you in those clothes. And I was like, I am. I'm going to see me in these clothes. I want them to match this thing. And I got really, really into it. Well, 6 months now, I've lost 34 pounds. Like all my numbers, you know what I mean? Like,
awesome.
So and I wake up every day and those coaches are telling me like the most positive things. And it's just like, for me, so good. So once I started waking up and listening to Peloton every day, I wanted to share that. So I literally take about 15 minutes in the morning and I go down my like Facebook feed and I try to like compliment 10 people. And it's just,
That's awesome.
I've started getting like emails and phone calls and handwritten cards because people are like, oh my gosh, like you're so positive. And y'all, it's just like takes me 10 minutes, 10 minutes to spread love.
I love that. I love that you're bringing people together rather than, and I would agree. I think Aisha, what you said resonated with me about, there's a lot of hate and pessimism out there, but it's all about like the big theys, like us and them, like they're doing this and they and that, but like individuals and people that I'm talking to, positivity, man. People are people, and they want to come together, and they want to understand, and they want to, the others are just assholes.
Do better.
Like the assholes have too much voice in social media, but the world isn't full of that. It's not all assholes.
Definitely not. But if you Peloton, you'll be too tired to care when you're done. You hate me, good for you. I'm tired.
Aisha, do you have any exciting projects you're working on or anything you'd like to tell the listeners that to check out or stuff you got on the go that's you're super psyched about besides Peloton?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always doing a lot, but you can always just find me on LinkedIn where I'm sharing all of those things and engaging with community, and happy to listen and learn and always willing to work. So, yep, you can find me at equityovereverything.org or as Aisha Johnson Adams on LinkedIn.
And if anybody knows a publisher, you're looking for $1 million book deal? Is that
yes, I'm definitely looking for $1 million book deal for sure.
Need some shoes. New shoes.
I don't need new shoes. I need a new check, like I want to get on that list, guys. Like, how do you get on that list?
I think you spread more positivity and you find people who want to share your message, and you get your little Aisha ambassadors running a little bit all over the place. It's a way to rumble. Before we go, did you have any questions for us?
Well, I just want to say, like, this has been such a great conversation. Thanks for having me here. And I hope I get to hear from you all again, and I get to come back one day. So,
Aisha, you absolutely get to come back whenever you want. That is a standing offer for sure. Jeremy and I are just getting going on our podcast journey, but like you, we decided we'd like to change the world while we're here in this short journey of this lifetime. So I will definitely follow you and reach out if there's any way we can support you and your umpteen business ventures, and or buy the book when it's out. We are here to support you in any way possible.
Well, I just appreciate it, and I appreciate you all because, just these conversations are so rich and powerful, and you don't feel the impact for 2 weeks, but then, 3 weeks later, you hear something and you're like, oh yeah, we talked about that. And that growth is just so important. So just thank you for spending time with me and sharing with me.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us join your fish tank for the last hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.